Over the years, I've tried just about every approach to planning out my week, from detailed digital setups to simple paper lists. And over time, I've dialed in a simple, sustainable method that actually works. It keeps me aligned with my long-term goals, helps me avoid overwhelm, and makes it easier to actually get the important things done. So in this video, I'll walk you through exactly how I plan out my week, from zeroing in on the right priorities to creating a weekly plan that I can stick to and execute with confidence. Let's get into it. And this all starts with step one, which is to review our bigger goals. And what I mean by this is specifically taking a look at our vision for our life and any sort of quarterly goals that we've set for ourselves. And this is really crucial because it helps us stay calibrated with the bigger picture and answer the question of why are we doing all of this in the first place. And we need to periodically remind ourselves this. Otherwise, it can be very easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day and be sort of reactive, just doing whatever screams for your attention the most and getting misaligned with actually making progress towards, the big picture for what you want your life to look like. And one way I like to think about this is imagine that you had to eat a big mountain of sand, like one of those sand dunes at a beach or something. You had to eat the entire thing. It sounds ridiculous. I know, just bear with me for a second. Well, that seems like an impossible task. There's no way that you can eat like hundreds of pounds of sand in one sitting. And that act of eating this whole sand dune is like achieving your biggest goals in life, whether it's, becoming a doctor or starting a billion-dollar business or company or moving to your dream house on some private island or by the beach or whatever wildest goals or dreams that you might have. That's eating this entire sand dune. And the thought of being able to do that right now might seem just crazy, impossible, overwhelming. But then imagine if each week we told ourselves, okay, we don't need to worry about eating this giant sand dune with hundreds of pounds of sand. We just need to have like a little handful, maybe a few grams or something, and we can eat that throughout the week. That would seem doable, right? Like it'd still be a little weird, eating sand, obviously, but it's possible, just wash it down with some water and you could get it done probably. Well, that's how we can think about this whole weekly planning process. Is we've got the big mountain of sand, which is our overall goals and vision for our life that we're trying to achieve. And we just take out a small chunk of that each week to work on. And then on a daily scale, we take a small chunk out of that weekly little handful of sand to eat on a particular day. And this is the crucial part that a lot of people miss when it comes to this planning and productivity stuff. It's really easy to get caught up in the moment and focusing on a smaller scale of a week or a day and just trying to work really hard, be super efficient, but then you might not end up getting anywhere because your actions on a smaller scale are not aligned with the bigger picture and your goals and vision for your ideal lifestyle. Now, if you want a complete system for organizing your life, taking control of your time, and following through on the things that matter to you most, I'm putting together a program called Purposeful Productivity. It'll help you build systems in your life to feel more organized and in control of your time and consistently taking action on the things that contribute to your broader life goals. Click the link in the description to join the waitlist and be the first to know when it launches. All right, so once we've calibrated with our goals and broader life vision, we can move on to step two, which is to just quickly reflect on the previous week. So once you've got this weekly planning system down, you'll have built a weekly plan week after week, and you can start the next week by just kind of reviewing your plan from the previous week, asking yourselves a couple questions, what went well, what could we do more or less of in the coming weeks. So I like to just write a few sentences down in my journal app or on a notebook or just at the bottom of my weekly plan from the previous week, and just taking these few minutes to reflect and analyze how things went will save you so much time in the long run and will help you continuously improve over time, because you'll prevent yourself from falling into the same patterns and bad habits or whatever may have gone wrong during the previous week, and you'll just constantly get better over time. So once we've done some reflection, we can move on to step three, which is to process our inboxes and update any kind of task lists that we might have. And so this is things like our email inbox, messages, but then more importantly, our task inboxes. So I use Apple Notes, and I just have like an inbox document where throughout the day, I'll jot down any sort of thoughts, concerns, or tasks that come to mind, and I'll come back to these at the end of the day usually, but if not, during this weekly planning process, I'll go through that entire inbox list and really, be ruthless about deleting things that are no longer relevant, or maybe I decided that I don't actually need to worry about. And then anything that is actually important, I'll move over to my broader task management system. And this can be done in something like Apple Reminders, or just on a separate document or notebook, whatever you use. After this step, we're going to later move on to picking out the key tasks that we're going to work on for this week. And so it's crucial that we've done some maintenance here and have an updated list of all the different things that we could be working on this coming week. All right, so step 4 is to review our digital calendar. So I'm a big fan of using digital calendars like Apple Calendar to manage my time and keep track of meetings and appointments. And so at this stage, I like to just look ahead at the next few weeks to see what's going on, see if there are any important things at work or in my personal life that I need to consider when making my weekly plan. And doing this just gives me more context for when I plan out what I'm actually going to do during the coming week. And I can also take this time to update my calendar, move events around or meetings as needed. And so this is only going to take a few minutes, but it's very important that we do this before we plan out the specifics of the week ahead. All right, and finally, step 5 is to create our weekly plan. And this is, I guess, the fun part where we actually get into deciding what we're going to do this week. I know there's a lot of steps leading up to this, but I think all of those are crucial for establishing context and staying calibrated with our broader life vision. And so we make sure that we are spending our time this week in an intentional way that will actually move the needle forward in our life, and not just kind of doing things for the sake of doing things and just being busy without being actually productive. So don't skip those earlier steps if you just jump to this timestamp in the video. Now, one thing to consider when doing this entire weekly planning process is that ideally we want to do it when we're in a pretty calm, clear, and rational headspace. I like to do this on Sunday midday in a calming setting, either just in my apartment or at a nice cafe or something, and just make it this kind of fun, relaxing weekly ritual. And that will go a long way when it comes to making sure that this plan is actually a good one rather than one that's created out of stress and fear and anxiety. All right, so this process basically involves taking a look at all the possible things that we could do with our time this week. So this might involve looking through all our various task lists or deadlines or any projects that we're working on at our job, and asking ourselves, okay, what do we actually want to do this week, and setting some limits for what we're going to work on, and making sure that we are intentional about picking things that are high impact and urgent and actually important and going to move us towards those bigger goals. And remember, this is like picking out that handful of sand from the big mountain of sand that we need to eat, just picking out a small piece of it that we're going to focus on this week. It's also important that our weekly plan is something that we can keep in front of us at all times to, stay on track throughout the week. It's not going to get lost on our computer or our phone. So what does this actually end up looking like? Well, I personally like to just write out my weekly plan on paper in my notebook, and that's just really nice. It's very customizable. Obviously, it's just a blank sheet of paper, and it feels official, kind of writing by hand, all neat and organized. You could also just type it up on Apple Notes or a Google Doc, but then make sure to print it out and tape it to your desk or something. Or if you have a whiteboard in your office, that's also a great place. Any of these can work as long as you can keep it in front of you at all times, and it just has more of this formal or official feel. I don't know if that makes sense, but it works well for me. All right, so let's get into actually creating and formatting this weekly plan. So I'm just going to use Apple Notes for the purposes of this video, and also to spare you from my messy handwriting. But basically, I'll start by just titling the document. So weekly plan, and we can put the dates here. So starting from Monday is how I like to do it. Monday the 11th through the 17th. And this is where it's really up to you how you want to format things. And I like to kind of keep it flexible based on the demands of that week. So this could mean writing out tasks and organizing them by day of the week, or by kind of the category or role in my life, or by which sort of quarterly goal they contribute to, or in order of execution. Some weeks you might have like a bunch of smaller things going on, a bunch of moving parts in your work and personal life, meetings, appointments, and it's just kind of hectic, and you kind of need to figure out how all those pieces work together. So in that case, it may be helpful to literally write out the days of the week. And then from here, just have like task 1, task 2, task 3, and to kind of go about things like that by day. And then, if something doesn't get done on a particular day, you can move it to the next day like that. But that's more time-based organization. But then some weeks you might just have kind of one major project or deadline at work. And so it's kind of all hands on deck. That's the main thing you just need to get done this week. And, everything else in your life will just kind of fall where it does, and you'll figure it out. But the main priority is this one thing. So maybe it's just your weekly plan could look like, finish X project. And that's kind of like your big thing. And then you just go through and maybe break it down into specific tasks. So task 1, task 2, task 3, and maybe you can order these by priority, or the order of operations for how you're going to get this big project done or meet this deadline. And throughout the week, each day, you just kind of refer back to this weekly plan and check things off one at a time. Now, for me personally, by default, how I tend to do it is to basically create little mini task lists for different categories or roles in my life. So I might have one for content, so that's like YouTube related stuff, business, my day job, and personal. And then within each of these, I'll select a few tasks that I want to get done just this week. So I'll look at my bigger task management system for all of these areas of my life, and I'll select the highest priority things that I want to get done this week and forget about everything else for now until next week. We'll worry about that later. This week, I'll just focus on, these few things that I select. So what this might end up looking like would be like make thumbnail for calendar, film videos 1 and 2. Business could be like send out email newsletter. Job might be, finish analysis for X matter. And then personal might look something like, let's see, this past week I needed to contact apartment about refunding mistaken charges. I don't know if that English is right. And maybe update finance tracker, do monthly finance review. And so this is how things will end up looking. I'll have kind of these little mini task lists of things that I've decided that I'm actually going to get done this week. And then maybe I'll write like a couple sentences, just sort of like summarizing what the game plan is for this week. So need to lock in at work and get that presentation, film some YouTube videos. So need to get scripts prepared, knock out some of the personal household tasks. And so this will just be like a little statement kind of summarizing, what's going on this week, how I'm going to manage to get all these things done. Now, this doesn't look like a lot. I just wrote a few examples for each. My weekly plan usually is a lot longer than this on a typical week, but that's kind of how I would go about things. And of course, this whole format could change depending on the demands of that particular week. But I do like to default to this sort of context-based approach where each little task list on here is a different role or context in my life. And that kind of helps me avoid task switching and overwhelm. So I know that, okay, when I'm at work, I just look at this list for all the things related to my job. I can forget about everything else, just focus on the things I have to do for work. And when I, am at home on the weekends or early before work, and okay, this is my time to work on my YouTube channel, I just refer to this list and lock in on that. So ideally, I like to get this weekly planning process done sometime before Monday. It usually happens for me midday Sunday. So probably later today, this afternoon, I'll actually, clean this up and do my official weekly planning process. But some weeks I may do it kind of earlier, either Friday afternoon or Saturday, depending on, if I have a really busy weekend. Now, once you have your week planned out like this, it's crucial that we stay calibrated to it throughout each day of the week, because remember, this weekly plan is aligned with our big picture goals and life vision, and so we need our days to be aligned with this weekly plan. Go click this video where I walk you through the daily planning process that I've been following and how I take this weekly plan and turn it into a simple, actionable daily plan that helps me make progress on the things that matter to me most. I'll see you over there in that video.